The unexpected inheritance. Captain Sarah Chen stood at attention, her eyes fixed on the holographic display of Earth's orbital defense network. The vast array of satellites and weaponry glowed softly against the backdrop of her home planet. After 15 years in the Terran Space Force, she thought she'd seen it all. But nothing could have prepared her for the message that was about to change her life forever. Captain Chen, incoming transmission from Galactic Central, her AI assistant chirped. Priority Alpha. Sarah's brow furrowed. Priority Alpha meant it came directly from the highest echelons of the Galactic Confederation. Put it through, Heir. The holographic display shifted, revealing the stern face of Ambassador Zixtal, the Araxian representative to Earth. His tentacled head writhed with barely contained emotion. Captain Chen, he began, his translator struggling to convey the complexity of Araxian speech. I regret to inform you of the passing of Krovac, emissary of the Araxian cluster, and your friend. Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. Krovac dead. It couldn't be. They'd served together during the Centauri incursion, forging a bond that transcended species. He'd been like a brother to her. How? She managed to ask, her voice barely above a whisper. The circumstances are unclear, Zixtal replied, his tentacles twisting in what Sarah recognized as discomfort. But that is not why I've contacted you. Krovac has named you as his sole heir. Sarah blinked, certain she had misheard. I'm sorry, Ambassador. Did you say heir? Indeed. You are to inherit all of Krovac's holdings, including his vast estates on Araxis Prime, his fleet of starships, and Zixtal paused, his large, multifaceted eyes blinking rapidly, and his bondmate, Lirael. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Sarah gripped the edge of her console, struggling to process this information. Inherit Krovac's wife. Was that even legal? Ambassador, there must be some mistake. I can't possibly. There is no mistake, Captain Chen. Zixtal interrupted. Krovac was most explicit in his will. You are to assume all of his responsibilities, including the care and protection of Lirael. It is unprecedented for a human to hold such a position in Araxian society, but Krovac's word is law. Sarah's mind raced. She'd visited Araxis Prime once, years ago. The gravity was lighter, the air thicker with exotic spores. And the Araxians themselves, tentacled, multi-limbed beings that communicated as much through color changes as through speech. How could she possibly navigate their complex society? When am I expected to assume these responsibilities? Sarah asked, already dreading the answer. Immediately, Zixtal replied. A transport has been dispatched to your station. You are to gather your personal effects and depart for Araxis Prime within the hour. An hour? Sarah exclaimed. But my duties here, my command, have already been reassigned, Zixtal said, his tone brooking no argument. The Galactic Confederation considers this a matter of utmost diplomatic importance. You will be briefed further en route. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving Sarah staring at her own bewildered reflection in the dark screen. She took a deep breath, trying to center herself. Heir, she called out to her AI assistant. Begin packing protocols. And send a message to my parents. Tell them I'm going on an extended mission. Details to follow. As Sarah moved through her quarters, hastily gathering her most precious possessions, her mind whirled with questions. What had really happened to Krovac? Why had he chosen her for this immense responsibility? And Lirael, what would she think of a human suddenly thrust into her life? The next few hours passed in a blur. Before she knew it, Sarah found herself aboard a sleek Araxian vessel, streaking through hyperspace towards a future she could never have imagined. As she stared out at the swirling vortex of faster-than-light travel, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was leaving behind more than just her home and career. She was leaving behind her entire understanding of the universe. The ship's AI announced their impending arrival, jolting Sarah from her reverie. She smoothed down her Terran uniform, a symbol of humanity that now felt woefully inadequate for the task ahead. As the ship descended through Araxis Prime's swirling atmosphere, Sarah caught her first glimpse of her new home. The planet's surface was a riot of colors. Vast purple oceans, forests of iridescent vegetation, and spiraling cities that seemed to defy gravity itself. The vessel touched down on a landing pad jutting out from a towering spire. As the airlock hissed open, Sarah was hit by a wave of humid, spore-laden air. She blinked, her eyes adjusting to the planet's red-tinged sunlight. And there, waiting at the base of the ramp, stood Lirael. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She'd seen images of Araxians before, but nothing had prepared her for Lirael's otherworldly beauty. Her skin shimmered with patterns of bioluminescence, shifting colors in a mesmerizing dance. Multiple limbs moved with impossible grace, and her large, expressive eyes fixed on Sarah, with an intensity that made her heart race. "Greetings, Sarah Chen," Lirael's voice resonated in Sarah's mind, a melodic telepathic communication. "I welcome you to your new home." Sarah swallowed hard, forcing herself to take a step forward. This was it, the moment that would define the rest of her life. With a deep breath, she descended the ramp, leaving behind the familiar confines of human space and stepping into a world of alien wonders and hidden dangers. As she approached Lirael, Sarah struggled to find the right words. How do you introduce yourself to someone who's just lost their husband and is now, through some twist of alien law, bound to you? "Lirael," Sarah began, her voice wavering slightly. "I'm so sorry for your loss. He was like family to me." Lirael's skin rippled with a pattern Sarah couldn't interpret. "Krovac spoke often of you, Sarah Chen. He held you in the highest regard." Her mental voice carried a depth of emotion that transcended species. "Come, there is much to discuss, and time grows short." As Lirael led Sarah towards the towering spire, the human captain couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking into something far more complex and dangerous than a simple inheritance. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Sarah knew one thing for certain: her life would never be the same again. Adapting to a new reality, Sarah followed Lirael through the winding corridors of the spire, her eyes darting from one alien marvel to another. The walls seemed to pulse with life, changing colors and patterns in response to their presence. Everywhere she looked, there were reminders that she was no longer in human space. "This will be your primary residence." Lirael's telepathic voice resonated in Sarah's mind as they entered a vast chamber. The room was a blend of organic and technological elements, with furniture that seemed to grow from the floor and holographic displays floating in midair. Sarah's jaw dropped. "This is incredible," she managed to say, her voice filled with awe. Lirael's skin shimmered with what Sarah hoped was amusement. Krovac always said humans were easily impressed. As Sarah explored the room, running her hands over the strange textures and marveling at the view of the alien cityscape outside, Lirael continued to speak. "You must understand, Sarah Chen, that your position here is unprecedented. No human has ever held such authority in Araxian society. There will be those who question Krovac's decision, who may seek to undermine you." Sarah turned to face Lirael, her expression serious. "I'm beginning to realize that. But why me? Why did Krovac choose me for this?" Lirael's multiple limbs moved in a gesture Sarah couldn't interpret. "That is a question I cannot answer. But I believe Krovac saw something in you, a quality that he believed would be vital in the times to come." Before Sarah could press further, a chime sounded throughout the room. Lirael's skin rippled with urgency. "The council awaits. We must prepare you for your presentation." The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. Sarah was dressed in Araxian ceremonial garb, a shimmering robe that seemed to mold itself to her body. Lirael instructed her in the complex etiquette of Araxian high society, drilling her on proper greetings and gestures. "Remember," Lirael said as they stood before the massive doors of the council chamber, "show no weakness. The council respects strength above all else." Sarah took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. She'd faced down Centauri war fleets. She could handle a room full of alien politicians. The doors swung open, revealing a circular chamber filled with Araxians of various shapes and sizes. Their tentacles writhed, and their skin flickered with rapid color changes as they turned to regard the human in their midst. Sarah strode forward, her chin held high. She could feel the weight of their alien gazes upon her, judging, assessing. At the far end of the chamber sat a group of elder Araxians, their skin patterns more intricate and their tentacles adorned with gleaming ornaments. "Esteemed members of the council," Sarah began, her voice clear and strong. "I stand before you as the chosen heir of Krovac, emissary of the Araxian cluster. I am honored by this responsibility and committed to upholding the legacy of my friend and brother-in-arms." A ripple of color passed through the assembled Araxians. One of the elders, his skin a deep purple, leaned forward. "Human." His telepathic voice boomed in Sarah's mind. "You claim a position you cannot possibly understand. How can you hope to navigate the complexities of our society, to manage the vast holdings of an Araxian noble house?" Sarah felt a flicker of doubt, but she pushed it aside. "With respect, Elder, I may not fully understand your ways yet, but I am a quick learner. Krovac believed in me, and I intend to prove his faith was not misplaced." Another elder, this one with shimmering blue skin, spoke up. "And what of Lirael? How do you intend to fulfill your duties as her bondmate?" Sarah felt her cheeks flush. She glanced at Lirael, who stood impassively at her side. I will honor all of my responsibilities to the best of my ability. Lirael's well-being and happiness are of utmost importance to me." The chamber erupted in a cacophony of telepathic voices and swirling colors. Sarah stood her ground, her heart pounding but her expression resolute. Finally, the purple-skinned elder raised a tentacle for silence. "Very well. Sarah Chen of Earth, we will honor Krovac's decision, for now. But know that you will be watched closely. Any misstep, any failure to uphold your duties, and you will be stripped of your position and sent back to your homeworld in disgrace." Sarah bowed deeply. "I understand and accept your terms, honored elders." As they left the council chamber, Sarah felt a wave of exhaustion wash over her. Lirael guided her back to their quarters, her touch surprisingly gentle. "You did well," Lirael said as the doors closed behind them. "But this is only the beginning." Over the next few weeks, Sarah threw herself into learning everything she could about Araxian culture and her new responsibilities. She pored over holographic records, studied the complex financial systems that governed Krovac's vast holdings, and struggled to master the nuances of Araxian body language and color-based communication. Lirael proved to be an invaluable teacher and ally. Though initially distant, she began to warm to Sarah as they spent more time together. Sarah found herself increasingly fascinated by the alien woman, by her grace and intelligence, and the depths of emotion she could convey with a simple shift in her skin's patterns. One evening, as they shared a meal of exotic Araxian delicacies, Sarah finally worked up the courage to ask the question that had been gnawing at her. "Lirael," she began hesitantly, "I hope I'm not overstepping. But how do you feel about all of this? About being bound to me?" Lirael was silent for a long moment, her skin rippling with complex patterns. When she finally spoke, her mental voice was tinged with a sadness that transcended species. "I grieve for Krovac," she said. "He was my bondmate for many cycles, and I loved him deeply. But I trust in his wisdom. If he chose you, Sarah Chen, then he must have had good reason." Sarah nodded, feeling a lump in her throat. "I'll do everything I can to be worthy of that trust," she said softly. As the days passed, Sarah began to find her footing in this alien world. She attended meetings with Araxian business leaders, negotiating trade deals and managing the vast network of enterprises Krovac had built. To her surprise, she found that her military background served her well in these high-stakes discussions. But it wasn't all business and politics. Sarah also discovered the wonders of Araxis Prime. She explored the bioluminescent forests that surrounded the city, marveling at plants that sang and animals that could change their shape at will. She learned to appreciate the subtle flavors of Araxian cuisine and the haunting melodies of their music. Through it all, Lirael was by her side, guiding her, teaching her, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, growing closer to her. It was during one of their expeditions into the wilds of Araxis Prime that everything changed. They were trekking through a valley of crystal formations, the air filled with spores that glittered like stardust in the alien sunlight. Sarah was captivated by the beauty of it all, her eyes wide with wonder. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet began to tremble. Sarah heard a sound like shattering glass, and she turned to see a massive crystal spire toppling towards them. Without thinking, Sarah launched herself at Lirael, tackling the Araxian and rolling them both out of harm's way. They landed in a tangle of limbs, the crystal spire crashing to the ground mere inches away. For a moment, they lay there, Sarah's heart pounding. Then she realized the position they were in, her body pressed against Lirael's alien form. She could feel the Araxian's skin pulsing with rapid color changes, could sense the quickening of her breath. "Are you all right?" Sarah asked, her voice husky. Lirael's large eyes met Sarah's, and in that moment, something electric passed between them. "You saved me," Lirael said, her mental voice filled with a mix of surprise and something else, something that made Sarah's pulse quicken. Slowly, almost reluctantly, Sarah disentangled herself from Lirael and helped her to her feet. But as they made their way back to the city, Sarah couldn't shake the memory of that moment. The feel of Lirael's alien body against hers, the intensity in those otherworldly eyes. That night, as Sarah lay in her bed, staring out at the swirling colors of Araxis Prime's night sky, she realized that her feelings for Lirael had grown into something far more complex than simple friendship or duty. She was falling for the alien woman, despite all the barriers between them. But before Sarah could fully process this realization, an urgent message came through on her comm device. It was from one of Krovak's old associates, a data analyst who had been looking into the circumstances of the Araxian's death. The message was brief, but its contents sent a chill down Sarah's spine. "Found something. Krovak's death wasn't an accident. Watch your back. Trust no one." As Sarah sat up in bed, her mind racing, she knew that her adaptation to this new reality was far from complete. The real challenges and dangers were only just beginning. Uncovering the conspiracy. Sarah's fingers hovered over the comm device, her mind reeling from the implications of the message. Krovak's death wasn't an accident. The words echoed in her thoughts, opening up a chasm of questions and doubts. She glanced at the door connecting her room to Lirael's, torn between the urge to share this information and the warning to trust no one. After a moment's hesitation, she decided to keep the revelation to herself, at least until she had more information. Sleep eluded her that night. Sarah spent hours poring over the data files she had access to, searching for any clue that might shed light on Krovak's fate. As the first light of Araxis Prime's sun began to filter through her windows, she finally stumbled upon something curious. In the weeks leading up to his death, Krovak had made several trips to a remote research facility on one of Araxis Prime's moons. The purpose of these visits was not recorded, and the facility itself was shrouded in secrecy. A soft chime announced Lirael's presence before the Araxian glided into the room. Her skin rippled with concern as she took in Sarah's disheveled appearance. "You did not rest," Lirael observed, her mental voice tinged with worry. Sarah ran a hand through her tousled hair. "I was reviewing some of Krovak's old files. Lirael, do you know anything about a research facility on the third moon?" Lirael's skin flickered with surprise. Then, was that fear? "It is a restricted area," she said carefully. "Even I do not have clearance to know its purpose. Why do you ask?" Sarah weighed her options. Despite her growing feelings for Lirael, the warning to trust no one rang in her ears. She decided on a half-truth. I'm trying to understand all aspects of Krovak's work. It seems this facility was important to him. Lirael's tentacles writhed in what Sarah had come to recognize as discomfort. Perhaps it is best not to delve too deeply into matters beyond your purview, Sarah Chen. There are aspects of Araxian society that are complex. The evasiveness in Lirael's response only fueled Sarah's suspicions. She nodded, feigning acceptance. You're right, of course. I'm still learning my place here. As they prepared for the day's duties, Sarah's mind raced with plans. She needed to find a way to access that facility, to uncover what Krovak had been working on, but how to do it without arousing suspicion. The opportunity came sooner than she expected. During a meeting with the Araxian Trade Council, Sarah learned of an upcoming inspection tour of various off-world facilities. With careful maneuvering and a bit of human charm, she managed to have herself included in the delegation. As the sleek Araxian shuttle departed for the moons, Sarah felt a mix of anticipation and dread. She was stepping into unknown territory, possibly putting herself in danger. But the need to uncover the truth about Krovak's death drove her forward. The research facility on the third moon was a marvel of alien architecture, all sweeping curves and pulsating biomechanical surfaces. As the delegation moved through the public areas, Sarah kept her eyes open for any opportunity to slip away. Before Sarah could respond, the sound of pursuit echoed behind them. Without a word, Lirael grabbed Sarah's hand and pulled her along, leading her through a maze of passages Sarah hadn't known existed. They emerged onto a landing pad where a small Araxian craft waited. As they clambered aboard, Sarah turned to Lirael, her eyes wide with questions. Lirael's skin rippled with determination as she initiated the launch sequence. I received your message, she said. I don't understand everything that's happening, but I know one thing. I trust you, Sarah Chen. Now hold on tight. We're about to have company. As the craft lifted off, streaking away from the facility, Sarah saw other ships rising in pursuit. She strapped herself in, her mind reeling from the revelations of the day. One thing was clear. Her adventure on Araxis Prime was far from over. The conspiracy ran deeper than she had imagined, and now she was a fugitive on an alien world, with only Lirael by her side. As they accelerated into the star-studded sky, Sarah allowed herself a grim smile. If there was one thing humans excelled at, it was adapting to impossible situations, and she was about to give the Araxians a lesson in human ingenuity they would never forget. Human ingenuity unleashed. The Araxian craft hummed as it cut through the upper atmosphere of the moon, pursued by a squadron of larger vessels. Sarah's mind raced, assessing their options. Her years of tactical training in the Terran Space Force were kicking in, transforming fear into focused determination. Lirael, Sarah called out, her eyes scanning the ship's unfamiliar controls. What are this craft's capabilities? Weapons? Stealth systems? Lirael's skin flickered with patterns Sarah now recognized as stress. This is a personal transport, not a military vessel. We have basic shields, but no weapons. Sarah nodded, her mind already formulating a plan. What about the propulsion system? How does it work? As Lirael explained the basics of Araxian gravitic drive technology, Sarah's eyes lit up with an idea. It was risky, borderline insane, but it just might work. Can you get us into that debris field? Sarah asked, pointing to a cluster of abandoned satellites and space junk orbiting the moon. Lirael's skin rippled with confusion, but she complied, deftly maneuvering their small craft into the treacherous maze of metal and rock. Their pursuers hesitated, clearly unwilling to risk their larger ships in such hazardous conditions. Okay, Sarah said, her voice tight with concentration. I need you to divert all power from non-essential systems to the shields and the gravitic drive. Then, on my mark, I want you to create a gravitic pulse, as strong as you can make it. Lirael's tentacles worked the controls, her movements becoming more fluid as she began to understand Sarah's plan. Ready, she announced, her mental voice tinged with a mix of fear and excitement. Sarah took a deep breath, watching as their pursuers began to cautiously enter the debris field. Now, Lyrael activated the pulse. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, with a groaning of metal and a series of spectacular explosions, the debris field came to life. Chunks of satellite and shards of rock hurtled in all directions, caught in the sudden gravitational disturbance. Their small craft bucked and shuddered, but Lyrael's expert piloting kept them stable. Their pursuers weren't so lucky. Caught off guard by the sudden maelstrom, several ships collided with debris or each other, their shields flaring as they took damage. "Brilliant," Lyrael breathed, her skin shimmering with admiration. "But they'll regroup soon. Where do we go now?" Sarah leaned forward, studying the navigation display. "We need to disappear, go somewhere they won't think to look for us." Her eyes landed on a familiar shape, Earth. How fast can this ship go? Lyrael's skin pulsed with surprise. "You want to go to your homeworld, but surely that's the first place they'll search." Sarah shook her head, a sly smile playing on her lips. "Not quite. Set a course for Mars." As they sped towards the red planet, Sarah explained her plan. Mars, with its burgeoning human colonies and complex cave systems, would provide the perfect hiding place. More importantly, Sarah had contacts there, old military buddies who owed her favors and wouldn't ask too many questions. During the journey, Sarah and Lyrael took turns at the controls, using the time to share everything they knew about the conspiracy. Lyrael revealed that she had suspected something was amiss with Krovak's death, but had been too afraid to investigate. "I should have trusted you sooner," Lyrael said, her mental voice heavy with regret. "Krovak always said humans had a unique way of seeing through deception." Sarah reached out, gently touching one of Lyrael's tentacles. "We're in this together now. And together, we're going to uncover the truth and stop whatever Zaxlor is planning." Her chance came during a presentation on some benign research project. Feigning illness, and grateful that the Araxians weren't familiar enough with human physiology to question her symptoms, Sarah excused herself. Once out of sight, she moved quickly through the corridors, relying on the facility schematics she had memorized. Her heart pounded as she approached the secured door, praying that the access code she had acquired would work. To her relief, the door slid open with a soft hiss. Sarah slipped inside, finding herself in a dimly lit laboratory filled with strange equipment and glowing containment fields. As her eyes adjusted to the low light, Sarah gasped. Floating in one of the containment fields was a creature unlike anything she had ever seen. It was vaguely humanoid, but its body seemed to shift and change, never settling on a single form. "Magnificent, isn't it?" Sarah whirled around, her hand instinctively reaching for a weapon she no longer carried. Standing in the doorway was an Araxian she recognized from the council, the one with deep purple skin. "Elder Zaxlor," Sarah said, struggling to keep her voice steady. "I can explain." "There's no need, Sarah Chen," Zaxlor interrupted, his mental voice tinged with amusement. "I've been expecting you." Sarah's mind raced, trying to find a way out of this situation. What is this place? What is that thing? Zaxlor moved further into the room, his tentacles gesturing at the shifting creature. "This, my dear human, is the future, a being capable of adapting to any environment, of assuming any form. The ultimate spy, the ultimate warrior." "And Krovak?" Sarah asked, dreading the answer. "A visionary," Zaxlor said, his skin rippling with what might have been regret. "He saw the potential in this research, the power it could bring to our people. But he also saw the danger. He wanted to destroy it all." The pieces began to fall into place in Sarah's mind. "So you had him killed." Zaxlor's skin darkened. "It was regrettable, but necessary. Krovak's death was quick, painless. And now, thanks to his choice of Heir, we have an unprecedented opportunity." Sarah took a step back, her eyes darting between Zaxlor and the contained creature. "What do you mean?" Think about it, Sarah Chen, Zaxlor said, his mental voice growing intense. With your human adaptability and our Araxian technology, we could create something truly extraordinary. A being that could bridge our two species, that could revolutionize galactic politics. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as she realized what Zaxlor was proposing. You want to use me as a test subject. I prefer to think of it as evolution, Zaxlor said, moving closer. You could become something greater than human, greater than Araxian. You could be the key to a new era of galactic dominance. Sarah's mind raced, searching for a way out. She was trapped in a secure facility, facing an alien with unknown capabilities and a creature that defied the laws of biology as she understood them. But she was also a Terran Space Force captain, trained to handle impossible situations. And she had one advantage Zaxlor couldn't anticipate, her growing connection to Lirael. Focusing her thoughts, Sarah reached out with her mind, picturing Lirael's shimmering form. To her amazement, she felt something. A tendril of awareness, a faint echo of the telepathic bond she'd been developing with the Araxian woman. Lirael, she thought desperately, if you can hear me, I need help. The research facility on the third moon. Danger. Whether the message got through or not, Sarah knew she had to buy time. She straightened her posture, meeting Zaxlor's alien gaze. Tell me more about this research, she said, feigning interest. How does it work? As Zaxlor launched into an explanation, his tentacles gesticulating with enthusiasm, Sarah's mind worked furiously. She inched closer to the control panel of the containment field, her fingers itching to act. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the facility. Zaxlor's skin rippled with surprise and anger. What is the meaning of this? He demanded. Sarah sought her chance. In one fluid motion, she slammed her hand down on what she hoped was the release mechanism for the containment field. The glowing barrier flickered and died. Chaos erupted. The shape-shifting creature, freed from its prison, lashed out in confusion. Zaxlor's tentacles whipped through the air, trying to subdue the being he had helped create. In the midst of the pandemonium, Sarah bolted for the door. She ran through the corridors, alarms screaming around her, her heart pounding in her ears. As she rounded a corner, she collided with a familiar form. Lirael stood before her skin pulsing with a mixture of relief and fear. Sarah, Lirael's mental voice rang out. What have you done? As they approached Mars, Sarah guided Lirael through the process of masking their ship's signature to avoid detection by Earth's defense systems. They landed in a remote area of the Valles Marineris, the massive canyon system that skirted the planet's surface. Sarah led them to a hidden entrance, concealed beneath the rusty Martian soil. As they descended into the underground complex, they were met by a grizzled man with cybernetic implants visible on his temples. Well, he said, his voice gravelly from years of breathing Martian dust. If it isn't Mad Dog Chen, what kind of trouble have you gotten yourself into this time? Sarah grinned, clasping the man's hand. Jack, you old space dog. Remember when I saved your ass on Titan? Time to return the favor. Over the next few days, Sarah and Lirael worked tirelessly to gather intelligence and formulate a plan. Using Jack's extensive network of contacts and some creative hacking of Martian communication relays, they pieced together a clearer picture of the conspiracy. Zaxlor wasn't working alone. He had allies in key positions throughout the Araxian government and military. Their goal wasn't just to create shape-shifting spies. They were planning a coup, one that would position Araxis as the dominant force in the galaxy. We need to warn both our governments, Sarah said, pacing the small command center they'd set up. But we can't risk direct communication. They'd intercept it for sure. Lirael's skin rippled thoughtfully. What about the Galactic Confederation? Surely they would intervene if they knew what was happening. Sarah shook her head. By the time we convinced them, and they mobilized, it might be too late. We need to act now, strike at the heart of the conspiracy. It was then that Sarah had her most audacious idea yet. Lirael, she said slowly, How much do you know about that shape-shifting creature we saw in the lab? As Lyrael explained what she knew of the technology, Sarah's plan took shape. It was dangerous, possibly suicidal. But if it worked, they could bring down the entire conspiracy in one fell swoop. "We're going to infiltrate Zaxlor's inner circle," Sarah announced, "and we're going to use their own creation against them." The next week was a flurry of activity. Using salvage Araxian tech and human ingenuity, they cobbled together a device that could mimic the shape-shifting abilities of the creature, at least superficially. It wasn't perfect. It couldn't alter internal biology, but it might be enough to fool the conspirators. Sarah spent hours practicing with the device, learning to control the nanomachines that could alter her external appearance. It was disorienting, even painful at times, but she pushed through, driven by determination. Lyrael, meanwhile, worked on creating a false identity that would get them close to Zaxlor. She also taught Sarah more about Araxian body language and social cues, knowledge that would be crucial for the deception to work. As they made their final preparations, Sarah found a moment alone with Lyrael. The Araxian's skin was pulsing with worried patterns, her tentacles twisting anxiously. "Sarah," Lyrael's mental voice was soft, almost hesitant. "What we're about to do, the risks are enormous. If we're caught." Sarah reached out, gently taking Lyrael's hand in hers. The touch sent a shiver through both of them, a current of emotion that transcended their biological differences. "I know," Sarah said softly, "but we have to try. For Krovac, for both our peoples, and—" She paused, gathering her courage. "For us." Lyrael's skin blazed with a pattern Sarah had never seen before, a swirl of colors that seemed to express a depth of emotion beyond words. Slowly, tentatively, Lyrael leaned in, her alien features inches from Sarah's face. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Then, with a tenderness that belied her alien nature, Lyrael pressed her forehead against Sarah's, an intimate gesture in Araxian culture. No words were needed. In that touch, in the mingling of their breath, and the synchronization of their heartbeats, Sarah and Lyrael found a connection that bridged the vast gulf between their species. As they parted, both slightly dazed by the intensity of the moment, Sarah felt a renewed sense of purpose. They were no longer just fighting to uncover a conspiracy. They were fighting for a future where their two peoples could come together in ways never before imagined. With a shared nod of determination, Sarah and Lyrael made their final preparations. In a few hours, they would be heading back to Araxis Prime, walking into the heart of enemy territory. The fate of two worlds, and their own future, hung in the balance. As their ship lifted off from the red sands of Mars, Sarah allowed herself a grim smile. The conspirators thought they had created the ultimate weapon, a being that could shape-shift at will. But they were about to learn a harsh lesson about human adaptability and the power of interspecies cooperation. The final confrontation was at hand, and Sarah Chen, once a simple Terran Space Force captain, now the heir to an alien legacy and partner to an Araxian, was ready to show the galaxy what humanity was truly capable of. Triumph and new beginnings. The spires of Araxis Prime glittered in the alien sunlight as Sarah and Lyrael's ship made its final approach. Sarah took a deep breath, feeling the nanomachines in her body hum to life. With a thought, her appearance shifted, taking on the form of an Araxian dignitary they had carefully crafted for this mission. "Remember," Lyrael said, her mental voice tight with tension, "Zaxlor's inner circle meets in the high chamber of the central spire. We'll have one chance to get close enough to activate the signal." Sarah nodded, her now alien features set in determination. The plan was audacious. Use the shape-shifting technology to infiltrate the conspirators' meeting, then activate a signal that would broadcast their treasonous conversations to every communication device on Araxis Prime. It was a gamble, but if it worked, it would expose the coup attempt to the entire planet. As they disembarked, Sarah marveled at how easily they passed through security. The forged credentials Lyrael had created held up under scrutiny, and Sarah's mimicry of Araxian mannerisms was flawless. Years of military training combined with Lirael's careful coaching had prepared her well. They ascended the central spire, each step bringing them closer to danger and to the truth. Sarah could feel her heart racing, the unfamiliar rhythm of her Araxian disguise a constant reminder of the precarious nature of their deception. Finally, they'd reached the high chamber. Zaxlor stood at the center, his purple skin rippling with excitement as he addressed a group of high-ranking Araxians. "And with the shape-shifting technology perfected, we will be unstoppable," Zaxlor was saying. "The Galactic Confederation will bow before the might of Araxis." Sarah and Lirael exchanged a glance. This was the evidence they needed. Slowly, carefully, Sarah reached for the activation switch hidden in her robes. But at that moment, disaster struck. One of Zaxlor's aides, more observant than the others, noticed something off about Sarah's movements. "Wait," he cried out. "Something's not right." In an instant, the room erupted into chaos. Zaxlor's eyes locked onto Sarah, recognition and fury blazing in their alien depths. "The human," he snarled. "Seize them." Sarah's military instincts took over. In one fluid motion, she activated the signal and threw herself into action. The nanomachines in her body responded to her surge of adrenaline, her form shifting and adapting as she fought. Lirael was a whirlwind at her side, her tentacles lashing out with surprising strength. Together, they fought their way towards the exit, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. Just as it seemed they would be overwhelmed, the chamber's massive view-screen flickered to life. Zaxlor's treasonous words echoed throughout the room, broadcast to every corner of Araxis Prime. The effect was instantaneous. Confusion rippled through the ranks of their attackers. Some lowered their weapons, shocked by the revelations. Others turned on each other, long-held suspicions bursting to the surface. In the ensuing chaos, Sarah and Lirael made their escape. They raced through the corridors of the central spire, alarms blaring around them. But instead of pursuers, they found themselves joined by bewildered Araxians, some offering help, others demanding explanations. As they burst out onto a landing pad, they found themselves face to face with a contingent of Araxian security forces. Sarah tensed, ready for another fight. But to her surprise, the leader stepped forward and bowed. "Sarah Chen, Lirael," the Araxian said, his mental voice filled with a mix of awe and respect. "The Council of Elders requests your immediate presence. It seems you have quite a story to tell." The next few hours were a blur of debriefings, explanations, and rapid-fire decision-making. The exposure of Zaxlor's conspiracy had sent shockwaves through Araxian society. The shape-shifting technology was confiscated, its research data secured under the highest levels of encryption. As the dust settled, Sarah found herself standing before the full Council of Elders, Lirael at her side. The chamber was packed with Araxians, their skin rippling with a rainbow of emotions. The head elder, her skin a deep wise blue, stepped forward. "Sarah Chen of Earth," she began, her mental voice resonating with authority. "You have done our people a great service. You have exposed a rot at the heart of our society and prevented a catastrophe that would have engulfed the galaxy." Sarah bowed her head, feeling the weight of the moment. "I only did what I believed was right," she said, "for both our peoples." The head elder's skin rippled with what Sarah now recognized as approval. "Indeed, and in doing so, you have demonstrated the very qualities that Krovac saw in you. Courage, adaptability, and a unique perspective that bridges our two species." She paused, her gaze sweeping the chamber. "It is the decision of this council that you, Sarah Chen, will retain your position as Krovac's heir. Moreover, we extend to you an invitation to serve as Earth's first official ambassador to Araxis Prime." A murmur rippled through the assembled Araxians. Sarah felt a wave of emotion wash over her. Surprise, honor, and a touch of trepidation. She glanced at Lirael, seeing her own feelings reflected in the Araxian's shimmering skin. I am honored," Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. I accept with one condition. She took a deep breath, gathering her courage. That Lyrael be appointed as my co-ambassador. Our partnership has proven that when our species work together, we are capable of extraordinary things. The head elder's skin pulsed with amusement and what might have been approval. A wise suggestion. Very well, it shall be so. As the chamber erupted in a chorus of mental voices, Sarah felt Lyrael's tentacle slip into her hand. She squeezed it gently, marveling at how natural it felt now. In the days that followed, Sarah and Lyrael worked tirelessly to strengthen the bonds between Earth and Araxis Prime. The shape-shifting technology, while too dangerous to be used widely, provided insights that revolutionized medical treatments for both species. Cultural exchange programs flourished, and joint scientific ventures pushed the boundaries of what was thought possible. And through it all, Sarah and Lyrael's relationship deepened, becoming something unique in the galaxy, a bridge between two vastly different species, built on mutual respect, understanding, and love. One evening, as they stood on the balcony of their shared quarters, watching the twin moons of Araxis Prime rise over the glittering spires, Sarah reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her here. "You know," she said, turning to Lyrael with a smile, "when I first inherited Krovak's estate, I thought it was the end of my old life, but really, it was just the beginning." Lyrael's skin shimmered with affection, her tentacle gently caressing Sarah's cheek. Krovak always said that endings and beginnings were just a matter of perspective. I think he would be proud of what we've accomplished. Sarah nodded, leaning into Lyrael's touch. "We've still got a long way to go," she said, her gaze turning to the stars above. "There's so much out there to explore, so many challenges to face." Indeed, Lyrael agreed, her mental voice warm with excitement. "But whatever comes, we'll face it together, human and Araxian, united." As they stood there, silhouetted against the alien sky, Sarah felt a sense of peace and purpose she had never known before. She had found her place in the universe, bridging worlds and species, with Lyrael by her side. The future stretched out before them, full of endless possibilities. And Sarah Chen, once a simple Terran Space Force captain, now ambassador and heir to an alien legacy, was ready to embrace every moment of it.